Patents for technology for reading people's thoughts are skyrocketing. Patents include technologies for artificially changing people's moods and managing video games, as well as more traditional medical applications. According to the analysis, companies receive a huge number of patents related to brainwave reading, with a range of different applications. Between 2000 and 2009, fewer than 400 patents related to neurotechnology were filed. But in 2010 alone, the number reached 800, and last year 1,600 patents were filed, according to Sharp Brains, a research company. Patents extend to a range of applications, not just medical technology as one might expect. The company with the most patents is Nielsen, a research firm with 100. Microsoft also has 89 patents related to this topic. Other patented ways to apply this technology include devices that can change the thoughts or feelings of those they are aimed at, but it still has medical applications. Some of the patents obtained include technologies to measure brain damage and improve vision. The scope and diversity of patents suggest that we are at the beginning of the age of the ubiquity of neurotechnology, said the company's CEO, Álvaro Fernández. Neurotechnology has gone far beyond medicine, and non-medical corporations, often without publicizing it, are developing neurotechnology to improve work and life, Fernández said. NASA plans to build a giant radio telescope on the moon's dark side. Perhaps in the past, supernovae caused dramatic climate change, and they could happen again. What if we weren't the first developed civilization on Earth? Something terribly wrong in the Baltic Sea. So, there's this controversial proposal by a New York University professor to combat climate change through biohacking, and it's really caught the attention of some big players like the World Economic Forum and the Gates Foundation. Matthew Liao, a bioethicist at NYU, first brought up this idea back in 2012 in a paper he co-authored with Oxford University's Anders Sandberg and Rebecca Roche. The paper is titled Human Engineering and Climate Change. The main idea is to use radical biomedical interventions on humans to create people who are, well, physiologically environmentally friendly. Now, these biomedical interventions involve three approaches. First, there's a voluntary eugenics program aimed at tall people. Then there's the idea of inducing intolerance towards dietary meat. And finally, there's the concept of radically lowering birth rates by altering women's cognitive abilities. Liao mentions that the necessity of a eugenics program against tall people arises because the increase in human height over the past few centuries has had a negative environmental impact, mainly because tall people tend to consume more calories. Liao argues that human ecological footprints are partly correlated with our size. We need a certain amount of food and nutrients to maintain each kilogram of body mass, right? So, he says, other things being equal, the larger one is, the more food and energy one requires. Indeed, basal metabolic rate scales linearly with body mass and length. So, to carry out the eugenics program, Liao actually has two suggestions. The first one is the genetic screening of embryos before IVF implantation, which would let parents have the option to choose children who are likely to be short and small. Liao's second suggestion is, well, a bit more radical, though it's less focused on eugenics. It involves injecting children with hormones to stunt their growth. Now, when it comes to inducing dietary meat intolerance, Liao argues that the reason this is necessary is because livestock farming accounts for a significant portion of greenhouse gas emissions. To offset this, Liao proposes measures to make humans allergic to meat, like stimulating the immune system against common bovine proteins. This would basically prime the immune system to react to these proteins, so that eating meat would end up causing unpleasant experiences. Liao then tones down a bit by mentioning that a less radical way of making humans dislike meat would be to have people wear skin patches, sort of like nicotine patches, that would induce similar allergic responses when meat is consumed. Finally, for lowering birth rates, Liao suggests that women should start consuming smart drugs to enhance their cognitive abilities. He arrives at this suggestion by arguing that the more educated women become, the fewer children they have. Women with low cognitive ability are more likely to have children before age 18, says Liao. Hence, another possible human engineering solution is to use cognition enhancements, such as Ritalin and modafinil, to achieve lower birth rates. Liao goes on to suggest other more radical biohacks to create his ideal environmentally friendly human. He suggests creating people with night vision cat eyes, whose reduced need for lighting would result in the reduction of energy consumption. Liao also wants people to be prescribed with pro-social hormones like oxytocin, so as to make them more likely to cooperate in taking collective action against climate change. When Liao published his paper almost a decade ago, it caused some controversy, and was for the most part panned as eco-extremism, even by climate change activists. But fast forward to 2021 in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the dietary bioengineering proposals of the paper were brought up last week during the World Economic Forum's first virtual Davos summit, and could be added to the forum's United Nations-backed ET Forum program. This program includes a so-called planetary health diet that focuses on shifting towards plant-based diets, consuming alternative sources of proteins like insects and synthetic lab-grown meat. Last year in December, in preparation for this year's virtual Davos summit, the World Economic Forum unveiled its bioengineering framework in a presentation called 3 Scenarios for How Bioengineering Could Change Our World in 10 Years. Edible vaccines grown in plants and CRISPR gene editing were some of the highlights of the framework. The presentation was based off a World Economic Forum-sponsored academic paper called Bioengineering Horizon Scan 2020. For this year's Davos Summit, Liao's human bioengineering paper was added for consideration as a possible add-on to the Bioengineering Horizon Scan 2020 paper for both the World Economic Forum's bioengineering framework and climate change framework, as it tackles both topics. As radical as Matthew Liao's human bioengineering suggestions might seem, their consideration and deliberation by the World Economic Forum is no surprise. Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, considers bioengineering a key component of the ongoing Fourth Industrial Revolution.